If you pay taxes in this country, in America, then you, watching this on your iPhone on the bus, you watching this on your couch at home right now, you as an individual human American taxpayer, you pay more in taxes than ExxonMobil. Exxon has been the most profitable company in America for 8 years straight. In 2009, Exxon reported $19 billion in profit. What did they pay in terms of tax on that? They paid minus $156 million. They got an IRS rebate of $156 million. Sweet deal. Full disclosure, when Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont did his famous list of epic corporate tax avoidance earlier this year, Exxon was not exactly alone. Although Exxon came in first on his list, our corporate overlords at GE came in third on Senator Sanders' top 10 list of giant corporate tax avoiders. So even though you pay more taxes than Exxon, it should fairly be noted that you also pay more taxes than my giant corporate boss. If you pay taxes in this country, you also pay more than Chevron, which made $10 billion profit in 2009, and they also got a nice check back from Uncle Sam. Thank you very kindly. Also, ConocoPhillips, which made $16 billion from 2006 to 2009. They, at the same time, got nearly $500 million in tax breaks for doing the great public mitzvah of being a wildly profitable oil company. Of the 10 worst tax avoiders on Senator Sanders' list, 4 of them are oil companies. And it's not just that oil companies are great at avoiding taxes. We help them do it. The U.S. government currently hands out $4 billion a year in subsidies in the form of tax breaks to the same oil companies that are the most profitable corporations on earth ever. The 3 oil companies we just listed are all in the top 5 on the new Fortune 500. Fortune magazine also tallied their latest profits and the percentage by which those profits have grown since 2009. Look at ConocoPhillips, up by more than 130%. Oh, go ahead, put the fortune back in Fortune 500. You may wonder why oil companies raking in that much money would need an additional $4 billion a year in the form of welfare from Uncle Sam. Money that might instead go toward, I don't know, fixing stuff like this, right? Fixing our infrastructure, fixing our schools, or even just paying down the debt. Why instead are we giving that money away to oil companies that are already making bank? And that are charging us all so much for gas that I had to learn the unpleasant truth this past weekend that once you hit $75 on your debit card at the pump, you have to swipe your debit card again at the same pump so you can keep going because the tank is not full yet, even though you've already spent $75. Tomorrow, the nation's top 5 oil executives will get a chance to make their case on Capitol Hill for keeping their taxpayer subsidies. ConocoPhillips CEO Jim Mulva appeared in one ConocoPhillips press release today that called the prospect of taking away the subsidies for oil companies, quote, un-American. His company then issued a second press release that I think we are supposed to take as a ransom note. Quote, the oil and natural gas industry supports 9.1 million jobs in the United States, a fact that is too often overlooked. Also, taxes are included in gasoline prices. At a time when everyone is concerned over the cost of gasoline, Congress shouldn't do anything that could actually worsen the situation. Nice economy you got there. Be a shame if anything, happened to it. Joining us now, Senator Charles Schumer, Democrat of New York. He is the Senate's third-ranking Democrat. He sits on the Senate Finance Committee, which is holding the hearing with the 5 oil company executives tomorrow. Senator Schumer, thanks very much for being on the show tonight.
Glad to be here, Rachel.
The ConocoPhillips CEO says it would be un-American to stop paying subsidies to his oil company and other big oil companies. What is your feeling about that assertion?
Well, I think he's on a different planet than almost every other American except oil company executives. To say it is un-American, I'll tell you what's un-American. What's un-American is to take these tax breaks at a time when ConocoPhillips and the other oil companies are making record profits, at a time when oil is over $4 a barrel, a gallon at the pump, and over $100 a barrel, when they argued that they needed these subsidies when the price of oil was $17 and they needed to encourage exploration. At $100 a barrel, they don't need any financial nudge from the federal government to explore. They're making so much money, they're exploring.
In the short run, it seems to me like it makes sense politically to tie oil companies getting subsidies to how high gas prices are right now. But it seems like the more substantive question, maybe the longer-term question that this gets at, is whether or not corporate taxes and corporate subsidies get counted as one of the things that we spend on as a country. Are you opening that part of the conversation as D.C. fights about the deficit? You are.
In the bill that Senator Menendez is putting forward that the Senate will vote on next week, we put all the money to deficit reduction. Now, some have said we should put the money into encouraging green energy, and we're going to try to do that later on this year. But this is an issue of the deficit. Speaker Boehner says, the congressman from Wisconsin says that we have to decimate Medicare, end Medicare as we know it, to balance the budget. And yet at the same time, they're not touching the oil company subsidies. So we want to see if our Republican colleagues are actually going to say that keeping these subsidies to the oil companies when they're making record profits and need no encouragement to explore for oil is more important than, say, helping students go to college and not cutting Pell Grants, doing cancer research and not cutting NIH research. And one bit of good news actually happened tonight, Rachel. John McCain showed his old independent self when he said to a number of reporters when asked that he was seriously considering voting for our bill.
Do you think that you have a chance of passing this? Is Senator McCain's statement tonight a sign of more Republican support to come?
Well, actually, when you look at it, other Republicans in the past have supported ending these subsidies. Senator Thune did at one point. Speaker Boehner said that the big oil companies shouldn't get subsidies. We've had even some of the many other Republicans say the same thing. So we're hopeful this bill can pass. But I will tell you this. How are we ever going to come to some kind of budget agreement if the Republicans in the House continue to block even this little cut? Because what you say is right. You can balance the budget in one way by cutting programs, and some of those programs need to be trimmed down, but some of them are extremely important to average middle-class families. Or you can balance the budget by eliminating all these kinds of wasteful, what the economists would call tax expenditures, like this oil and gas one, and there are many others. We also believe that millionaires shouldn't get the kind of tax break that George Bush gave them, and that is something we should do sooner than cutting Pell Grants or cancer research, which the Republicans in the House seem to want to do.
On that issue of the Bush tax cuts, Ezra Klein at the Washington Post today had some useful math talking about how if Senator Boehner wants to demand $2 trillion in cuts, which he demanded earlier this week at a speech in New York in exchange for not holding the debt ceiling hostage, Ezra argued that if those $2 trillion of cuts were just granted to Speaker Boehner, whatever he wants them to be, the deficit would still not go down. The deficit would continue to grow because the Republicans want to hold on to the Bush tax cuts and indeed extend tax cuts for the wealthy and for corporations beyond anything that we've ever seen before. How soon are we going to have the debate about the Bush tax cuts and the rest of the Republican tax cut proposals?
Well, this is the oil subsidies are our opening foray, but we're going to go on to these other issues that you have mentioned. And the bottom line is very, very simple. If you want to get the deficit in order, you can do it in only one of two ways. There aren't enough cuts, as you said, and as Ezra Klein said today, on the domestic discretionary programs to do it. You have to do one of two things. You have to decimate Medicare, which the House Republican budget did, or you have to eliminate these tax cuts for the very wealthy, whether they be wealthy individuals or wealthy corporations like the great American company Conoco. And those are the only two choices. And 80% of all Americans would favor the choice we make, which is to eliminate the tax cuts to the wealthy, not decimate Medicare. And Republicans, when they go home to their districts, are learning just this, and that's why they're having some trouble.
Democratic Senator Charles Schumer of New York. Sir, thank you very much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it.
Nice to talk to you, Rachel.
Thank you.